Hi there, and welcome to a little knit and chat where I'm talking all about my all-time favorite fall and winter knit projects. If you're new here, my name is Caitlin, and I'm a knitter, spinner, sewist, and sometimes quilter based out of the Pacific Northwest. Grab your craft of choice, settle in, and let's get started. So you may have caught one of my more recent videos all about my fall knitting plans. And while I loved prepping for and making that video, and I really love watching other people's seasonal knitting plans videos, I think, especially as someone with a newer channel, it just felt like I wasn't giving the complete picture. There was so much that I wanted to say about why I was choosing the projects I was choosing, and how my past projects have kind of informed what I want to make moving forward. And there just wasn't really time and the format didn't feel right. So I did want to dedicate a video just to that, to the projects that I have made and loved, not only the process of making, but the act of having them in my closet and wearing them. I think that can tell a lot about a person, and since I am newer, I just wanted to share a little bit more about that with you. So today I'm going to be talking about my favorite knits in 4 different categories. The first one is going to be kind of cozy fall staples, things that are really easy to knit and to style for everyday wear. And 2 will be my textured projects. So that could be knit purl texture, lace, or cables. These ones tend to involve a little bit more focus and specialized techniques, but the end results are just so lovely and I feel like really fitting for fall and winter. And then the third category is going to be colorwork projects. I'm specifically going to be talking about stranded colorwork because that is what I really have done the most of in the past. And then last, I kind of wanted to throw in a little bonus category of my favorite fall and winter accessories. Like I said, I have made every single one of these projects at least once, if not multiple times, and many of them I would like to make again. This is like the cream of the crop, the best of the best in my admittedly subjective perspective. The ones that have really stood the test of time in terms of both in the act of making them and in the act of wearing them and incorporating them into my daily personal style. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first section, which is all about the cozy closet staples. Think stockinette in the round. These are the projects that are really easy to knit up and really easy to wear in just everyday life. I've knit a good number of patterns with these kinds of, simple stockinette styles. And I've picked 3, all with slightly different construction methods that I feel like are my favorite ones of all time. The first one I want to talk about today is actually the one I'm wearing, and it is the Cove sweater, which is a pattern by the Knit Purl Girl. This is a worsted weight sweater pattern knit on US 8 or 5mm needles, and it has a drop shoulder construction. The bust circumferences in this pattern range from 37 inches to 66.5 inches. And there's a recommended ease range of 6 to 10 inches of positive ease. So quite a bit of wiggle room there. This is, like I said, my drop shoulder construction pick. I recently finished this, but I truly don't feel like this is a recency bias thing. I genuinely really loved making this. I think the US 8 needle made things pace out really nicely. It was quite a quick knit. And there was just enough interest and unique bits and bobs that I think the process was really great, and I also really love wearing them. I think this would be a really good first sweater project if you haven't done one of these and want to dip your toe in. I think that specifically on the back panel, there are these really beautiful increase details where you can very, very clearly see what you're doing. And so when you're learning the new techniques, it's really nice to be able to very clearly visualize what's happening. And then, there's lots of little techniques added in, nothing too overwhelming, nothing a lot all at once. And so I think it's a really good introduction to a lot of techniques. And I think you can also omit some of them if you don't want to. For example, there's an option to add some German short rows in the waist to give it kind of a high-low look, but you can really easily omit those. I actually ended up omitting them just because I prefer a more straight shape most of the time. It also has these really beautiful 2x2 rib details. I have the cuffs rolled up on my sleeves right now because it's a little warm, but 2x2 rib details on the cuffs, the collar, and the hem. And I think 2x2 rib is really good for beginners because it's easier to make look a little bit more polished and clean than 1x1. But it also is just a really beautiful detail, even if you're not a beginner, even if you just have been knitting for years but are looking for a nice closet staple. I think 2x2 rib is just like a nice, unique touch, and it feels very, very cozy. I really love the gauge this worked up at. It's substantial, but it's not so warm and dense. There is some breathability to it. And I actually knit mine up in 2 strands of Knitting for Olive Merino, which, if you're familiar with that line of yarn, there are so many color options, and you can either do 2 strands of the same color, or you can like play with color a little bit. I did 2 different colors that are very close in color. And so it just has a very nice subtle marl. There's a lot of fun things you can do even with just this yarn that I used. That's not even going into the world of yarn, obviously. So I just think it's a really awesome sweater. It's one that I cannot wait to wear more this season. And I'm sure it's going to be one that I wear for many years to come. So much, I'm so confident in this that I actually already ordered yarn for my next Cove sweater because I'm genuinely that excited about it. And of all the drop shoulder stockinette sweater patterns that I've knit, I think that this one is like the best of all the worlds. It has nice detail, but it's not overwhelming. And I just think it results in a really like the perfect sweatshirt type sweater, which I love. The next pattern I want to talk about is the Lakes Pullover by Ozetta. This is also a worsted weight sweater pattern knit on US 8 or 5mm needles, but it has a saddle shoulder construction. And if you're not familiar, a saddle shoulder has a horizontal strip of fabric that goes from your neck to your shoulder right here and follows the shape of your shoulder, and then you pick up for your front and your back from that strip of fabric. So on something like a drop shoulder, you have 2 vertical panels that meet at one point, but the horizontal in a saddle shoulder really sets it apart and adds a really unique look and fit. So this is my saddle shoulder pick. This pattern has a bust circumference range of 40 inches to 67.5 inches, and Ozetta recommends 9.5 to 10.5 inches of positive ease. I really loved the process of knitting this one. This was my first and actually only saddle shoulder project I've ever done, but the instructions made it really clear and easy to follow. I never really was struggling to understand what was happening or being said, even with a new construction method to me. And the sweater is so, so cozy. I think the saddle shoulder, and then also the design has a very thick collar, like deep, and it just adds a lot of interest to the top area of the sweater, makes it feel a little bit more special and unique, but it still like fits and feels like a very cozy, oversized sweatshirt kind of vibe. Like it's so comfortable. And I think that the fit that the saddle shoulder gives is very interesting and unique, and like just a nice detail that you don't see super often. I knit mine up using Sorella Classic Worsted in the color Yale Daily News from their Gilmore Girls collection a few years ago. And I love the yarn choice. It's so soft. It's so comfortable. I do think if I were to knit this again, which I do want to do, I'm going to go for a less busy yarn. I think I want to go for something more like this, where it's kind of solid color. It can have some marl or a little bit of tonal movement, but I think that the speckles, while they're beautiful, kind of distract from the really unique construction method in the shoulder. So in my next one, I think I want the color to call a little less attention to it and let the construction stand out a little bit, but I still absolutely love this sweater. I think it's a really nice, like December, January sweater. It just feels very cozy and wintry and beautiful, which I love. And yeah, I will definitely be making the Lakes Pullover again. The last cozy closet staple I want to talk about today is the Louvre Sweater by Petite Knit. This is a DK weight sweater knit on US 6 or 4mm needles, and it has a raglan style construction. So this is my pick for raglans. The pattern has bust circumferences that range from 42 inches to 61 inches, and Petite Knit recommends about 9 inches of positive ease. I absolutely love my loop sweater. I think I knit it in 2023, and I think it is one of the most elegant sweaters that I have in my closet, which is really saying something, I think, for a standard stockinette project. I have some really beautiful laces and cable projects that are very elegant, but there's something about the loop sweater that is just like classic, timeless, effortlessly elevated. And I think a lot of it has to do with the neckline. It has a very high neck and it like comes down quite a bit too. So just the ribbing for the neckline is quite long. And then that's also matched in the cuffs and the hem as well. And I think it's just really easy to style up or down depending on where you're going and what you're doing. I can really easily see it being dressed up for a nice dinner party or maybe going to the ballet or something like that, but also could easily see it being somewhere like a pumpkin patch. So it's just a really versatile piece that I think can be dressed up or down depending on what you want to do. I'm very, very excited because I'm going to be knitting my second loop sweater in just a few weeks. I'm going to cast it on. I finally got the yarn in stash, so I'm very excited. I have been looking for the right yarn for my second version since I finished my first one a few years ago. So super, super excited to get that cast on, and I'm trying to currently resist the temptation to do it right now because I have other projects I want to finish first. But if you want to hear more about the loop sweater that I'm planning on knitting, I did talk about it in my fall knitting plans video. So I will go ahead and link that up in the corner and also in the video description if you haven't seen that and want to hear more. But yeah, I think there's something about raglans, and especially the loop sweater, that the way it's constructed just feels very seamless to make. You start at the tip of the collar and then you just work your way down and you make increases. And I think maybe most of us would agree that when knitting a raglan, towards the end of doing all the increases, it can feel kind of overwhelming and annoying to have that many stitches on the needle. But soon you break for the sleeves, you let the sleeve stitches rest and you continue the body, and it feels a lot better then. But the process then of working on the sleeves later is so seamless and easy. You don't have to worry about picking up a bunch of stitches like you do in a drop shoulder. And it just feels very nice and effortless to knit and wear. So highly recommend the loop sweater if you haven't made one already. So now let's talk about my favorite lace, cable, and texture projects. These ones take a little bit more focus and sometimes some more specialized techniques to make, but are so, so beautiful. And I think the texture is so fitting for the cold weather months. The first project I want to talk about is one that you've probably heard of many times before. It's very popular, but I think it's for a good reason. And that is the Book Club cardigan by Sari Nordland. This is a worsted weight sweater knit on US 6 or 4mm needles, and it has a drop shoulder construction. The bust circumferences in the pattern range from 37.5 inches to 69 inches, and Sari recommends about 8 inches of positive ease. I love the Book Club cardigan so much. I actually knit 2 versions of it back to back, which I had never done that before in the entire time I had been knitting, and I haven't done it since. This was the only time I've ever done it, and I don't regret it at all. I enjoyed it from start to finish, both projects. It was just really, really fun to knit. And the 2 sweaters that I got out of it are actually quite different. The first one I knit in my very own hand-spun yarn. That was my first hand-spun sweater project. And it's in a natural BFL, and I did a 3-ply. The yarn is very springy and bouncy and just like super full and cozy. And so that version of my book club is actually a little bit more like a jacket. Like it's a little bit denser, a little bit thicker and heavier. And it's a good outer layer actually, which is great. And then my second version is probably more of your traditional cardigan. I knit it up in Cascade 220, and it's just more of like a normal indoor style cardigan. So I love having both versions. I use them both. I love them both. And it genuinely was a joy to work these up, even though I did them back to back. The cable pattern in this sweater is just so beautiful and classic and timeless. And genuinely, it wasn't that hard to memorize. I want to say that I pretty much had the chart down by the end of the back panel or close to it, I think I've heard some people, it might take them a little bit longer to get the hang of it, but truly it's really not that complicated. And yeah, it just results in a really beautiful and classic cardigan that is really easy to style and wear. And I feel like I'm going to love it for years and years and years. It is truly just like a stunning sweater. So if you haven't given the book club cardigan a chance, I highly, highly recommend knitting up a version, or like me too. Next up is the Moby sweater by Petite Knit. This is a DK weight sweater knit on US 6 or 4mm needles, and it has a drop shoulder construction. I personally knit the Moby sweater for my husband, so I used the Moby sweater man version, but I think the normal Moby sweater is what most of you guys are going to be interested in, so I'm going to give the stats for that. The bust circumferences in that pattern range from 40 inches to 65 inches, and Petite Knit recommends 6 to 8 inches of positive ease. So the difference between the man and then the normal version, I think really is just in the ease that's recommended. And then I think the yardage of the yarn accounts for like longer sleeves and a longer torso. The chart doesn't change. I don't think the stitch counts really change all that much. And so I think the process of knitting the standard versus the man is quite similar. If I were going to knit a version for myself, I don't think I would buy the normal pattern. I think I would just use the one I already have, and I think it would work out fine. But yeah, this chart was really enjoyable to knit. I think it was a good balance of being interesting and engaging without feeling overwhelming, because it doesn't have much change in it. Once you establish the vertical columns that are going down, you just keep going in them all the way down. And so it's a good balance of being mindless, maybe not totally mindless, but like easy to read and to understand what the next row should be once you get going, and interesting. Like, it's really nice to see the charts and the cables kind of come to life as you go. I do think that this would be a good first cable project if you're interested in that, because of that. Like, you establish and you just keep going, and there's not a ton going on where you're constantly having to, remember how to do certain cables or anything like that. It is pretty straightforward once you figure it out. So I do think it would be a good first cable project if you're interested. And yeah, I think the result is just a sweater that feels very classic and timeless, and like so many cable projects, just nice and wearable for fall and winter months. Now let's talk about the Champagne Pullover by Sari Nordland. This is a DK weight sweater as well, knit on US 4 or 3.5mm needles, and it is also a drop shoulder construction. The pattern has bust circumferences ranging from 37.5 to 69 inches, and has about 8 inches of recommended positive ease. This was one of the patterns that before it was even released, I knew I wanted to make it. I think Sari posted a couple pictures of her knitting up the first sample, like before it was even available for testing. She was still kind of developing the design, and it was just so stunning. I knew I had to have it. So I made it pretty much immediately upon pattern release. And I will say the in-person sweater, like the pictures live up to the hype. It is so beautiful. The lace and the cables and how they all interact is just stunning. And it's one of the 2 or 3 sweaters that I've made that I look at it in my closet and I'm just like, wow, I cannot believe that I made that. That is so cool. It is, I will say, a more complex chart. Maybe that's not the best way to describe it. I remember when I first opened up the pattern, I scrolled down to the chart and like kind of was taken aback. The techniques in the chart aren't overly complicated. It is just a huge chart. I want to say it's like 100 stitches wide. It's like the entire width of your sweater is what the chart is. It like doesn't repeat. And so it is a huge, huge chart, which as someone who reads charts on my phone, I have an app called Knitting Chart that I paid for, but you can read charts line by line. I had to like zoom into this chart so much and scroll because it is just so big. Like I said, it's not like the techniques in it are overly complicated or difficult. it's just kind of harder to memorize the chart. I'm pretty sure this is one that I had to have the chart open with me at all times. Like I couldn't remember where I was. I might have an idea of what needs to come next, but I don't think I was ever like 100% certain, like, oh, this is what I do now. So it's definitely a more focused project, but the result is just absolutely stunning. This was my Christmas sweater last year, and it's very fitting for that. I do wish that I made this in a different yarn combo, and that is very much a personal preference thing. I know this about myself. I know that I don't like mohair all that much. I don't love the process of knitting with it. I don't love the process of wearing it. And the mohair sweaters in my closet are just ones that typically aren't the first ones I pull for. Let's just say that. But I felt like, I recommended using mohair, and I felt like it suited the pattern so well that I did want to go ahead and use it. And I don't know. It's not like I regret it. It's just, I wish that this was one that I pulled for a little bit more frequently. And I think just personally, it's a little bit warmer than I would like to wear, especially because it was my Christmas sweater, and my family tends to keep the house pretty warm at Christmas with the fireplace going and everything. So it is a little bit harder to wear indoors for me and my lifestyle. But if you love mohair, 100% knit this up using mohair. It's beautiful. And I think it does suit the pattern and the lace really well. But maybe if I were knitting it up again, I might try it without using a fuzzy yarn. I don't even think I would use Surrey. I would probably try and get a little bit more stitch definition and maybe just make something a little bit more wearable for me. But I'm still including it in this list because it is, like I said, it's one of the 2 or 3 that I'm just stunned by every time I see it. I'm so proud of it. And it is so beautiful. I think it's such a statement piece. I can wear it with basically whatever I want. And it's the statement piece of the outfit. It's beautiful. It does all the talking. And I think it will be a very classic winter sweater. I just need to find environments that are maybe a little bit chillier for me to wear it. The last textured sweater knit I want to talk about today is the Kama Cocoon by Anne Bensel. This is a Aran weight sweater knit on US 7 or 4.5mm needles, and it has a drop shoulder construction as well. The downside about this pattern is that it is one size fits all. The one size that is included has a bust circumference of 67 inches. And while I think that could technically fit a lot of people, it might not have the ease that everyone prefers. So it's kind of unfortunate. I feel like this would be a sweater pattern that would be very easy to grade for multiple sizes. So it's kind of unfortunate that it doesn't. But if 67-inch bust circumference sounds like a good fit for you, I highly recommend this pattern. If you want a blanket of a sweater, this is absolutely the pattern for you. I wear mine all the time, and it really is a cocoon. I think the fit of the sleeves, the length of the sleeves, the length of the body, and the ease on me personally, it really feels like a blanket, super cozy and drapey, and really, really nice. I made some pretty drastic changes from the recommended yarn in the pattern. Anne uses a pretty rustic woolly wool yarn, and I kind of went the opposite direction. I decided I wanted something a little bit more wearable year round. So I chose knitting for olive cotton merino, and I held that double. So you eagle-eyed listeners out there probably know that holding that yarn double does not equate to an Aran weight yarn. So I also had to size up my needle to a US 8 or 5mm needle. And I think the result is that I just ended up with something a lot more open and drapey than potentially the original sample was, or how it was intended to be knit up. But that being said, I really love the finished product that I got. I don't know that I would choose knitting for olive cotton merino again if I were going to knit it again, just because there are cables and lace in this pattern, and the cables just kind of lost all the life in them when I blocked this. The cotton, it just really can't hold up cables, and so it lost a lot of the texture and the interest in it, which is kind of unfortunate, but I genuinely love the fabric that it made. It's so soft and comfortable and like really good year round. And so it's kind of only a bummer if I wear this around other knitters. It's like, yeah, I probably didn't choose the best yarn. But I don't think anyone else notices. And it really is so soft and comfortable. I think if I were to knit this again, I would probably try 2 strands of knitting for olive merino, because I like the openness and the drapiness of the fabric. And I would size up that needle. I would keep it at US 8. But I think the merino would hold the cables a little bit better. This was my very first lace project. I had done some cables before, but this was my first lace project. And it was very, very easy and simple to pick up. The chart is so small. It's like 9 to 12 stitches by like 3 to 6 rows. It's very, very simple, very easy to memorize. And yeah, you just replicate it a million times over the sweater, which is why I think this would be quite easy to grade. And it's why it's so unfortunate that it's just one size. If you are a more confident knitter and you want a different ease in your sweater, I do think if you're comfortable doing the math and it's something that you want to do, I think this would be a really easy sweater to adjust your stitch counts to make a size that is more appropriate for you. But yeah, I know not everybody's up for that. So just with all of this in mind, I was kind of hesitant to recommend it because of the one size thing, but it truly is one of my most worn sweaters. So in case it works for you, in case you're interested in doing math, and kind of want to dip your toe into customizing patterns, I think this would be a good one to do it in. And maybe just maybe is something that you would like to knit up. So that's why I'm including it. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of my favorite Colorwork sweaters. This is kind of a newer category of knitting to me. I think I did my first Colorwork project at the end of 2023, and I've just kind of slowly sprinkled some projects throughout. This last year has definitely been much more Colorwork heavy for me. I've done a lot of Colorwork. It's just some of those projects have taken me quite a bit of time to get through. So the quantity isn't as high as some of the other categories. So I just have 2 recommendations with all of that in mind in this category. The first is the Azor sweater by Orlaine Souche. I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, I'm sorry, but the company is called Petbesh, so hopefully you can find it. This is a fingering weight sweater knit on US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needles, and it has a circular yoke. The bust circumference ranges from 37.5 inches to 65.5 inches, and has an intended ease of anywhere from 5 to 8 inches. This chart was so enjoyable to knit up. I think it's such a well done colorwork chart. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of experience coming into this, and this was my first time attempting using superwash yarn while knitting colorwork, which is kind of its own challenge. But I just think the way that the chart is designed, like you very rarely have to catch floats, if ever. If I can't remember, maybe there's like 1 or 2 rows you do. It's very rare. And just the way that the stitches and the colors are dispersed throughout, I think makes it a very enjoyable, quick, and easy colorwork motif to knit up. If you want a sweater that's good for your first colorwork, I think that this might be a really great one, because the stitches are pretty, like the colors are kind of evenly dispersed. You're not doing huge swatches of one color and then a huge swatch of another. It's kind of more peppered throughout. So I think it just makes a really nice and enjoyable knit. And if you're trying to pick up how to hold your tension and stuff, this might be a good project for you to start with. I love my Azor. I think it might be my favorite sweater, which feels very weird to say because I have so many that I love, truly, but there's just something about this one. It just checks all the boxes. It's lightweight enough that I can wear inside. It's really easy to layer with a jacket or another sweater if I need some more warmth. It's just stunning. I love the colors I chose. I love the yarn I chose. The colorwork motif is just beautiful, and I think it's really interesting because this is one that I feel like looks very different depending on if you do it in the lighter or the darker color. I think the motif comes across quite different, which is cool. And yeah, it is just such a lovely sweater to wear. It was so fun to knit, and this is like the sweater that made me want to get into color work more. After I finished my Azor, that is what inspired me to start my plans for my Vita cardigan, which is like my Mount Everest of Colorwork sweaters. And actually I'm going to talk about it in just a second, but I love my Azor. If you want to get into colorwork and you aren't really sure where to start, I think that this would be a really good one to start with. Or if you just want a nice, enjoyable sweater project, I think that this one is so underrated and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Then the next colorwork sweater, and actually the only other one I want to talk about today, is the Vita by Susan Crawford. This is the only one I'm talking about today that actually isn't a finished object yet. It is still on my needles. I've been working on it off and on since January, and I was kind of hesitant to put it in this list, but because I've actually been able to try it on now, I'm at a point where I can try it on, I do feel confident that this is going to also be a finished object that I love wearing, so I did want to mention it today. But like I said, this is a pattern by Susan Crawford. This is inside her book Echoes, and it's a fingering weight sweater knit on US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needles. This construction is a little bit more complex. It's bottom up, and it also has steeks. So it has a center steek and 2 arm steeks, but it has a drop shoulder construction. The bust circumferences range from 30 to 60 inches and has a recommended ease of 8 to 10 inches. This one, I knew going into this one that it was going to be like my Mount Everest. It was going to take time. It was going to take attention to detail, and it was going to be a commitment. Like, I knew that going in, and part of me was quite intimidated. But like I said, I had just come off my Azor, which I absolutely loved. So I felt like it was the time. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted something more complex and something more of a commitment. And so I went ahead and bought the yarns, cast on this pattern. And I will say it's kind of been an up and down relationship knitting this. It has taken me the longest that any sweater has ever taken me, but I do think a lot of this came down to just personal reasons and things going on in my life this year that I didn't necessarily anticipate. So we moved, I had a job change, stuff like that. So it has taken me some time, and I let it hibernate over the summer, but bringing it back out of hibernation, I'm reminded of how much joy this sweater has brought me. And kind of in the same way that the champagne pullover brought me, it's one of the ones that I'm looking at and it's just like, wow, I cannot believe I'm making this. It's so intricate. It's so detailed. But I do think it's really well designed. If maybe you've done color work like me, but you're wanting to dive into something more complex, but maybe not too complex, just like the Goldilocks amount, you want to challenge yourself. I do think that this could be a good fit. It's my first steeked project. It's my first colorwork project with more than 2 colors. So it is a lot of firsts for me, but it is manageable because I think it's just done really well. So there are a few versions, so I'm only going to be able to speak to the one that I'm knitting. There's a short version and a long version, and then there's also a 7 color version and an 11 color version, I believe. So I am doing the short version and I am doing the 7 color version. So with that in mind, my version at least, the other one might be 2, I just don't know. You only use 2 colors at a time in any given row. So from that perspective, if you take it 1 row at a time, it's really not that different from doing something like the Azor, if you just take it one thing at a time. And I think it just comes together really lovely. And you start with the body, right? And so all of your color changes actually happen in the center steek. So you don't need to worry about weaving in ends or any weird color transitions because that gets cut open anyway, which is really nice. Where I ran into some trouble, some lack of motivation was when I started doing the sleeve, and you do have to weave in ends and you do have to make a clean transition between colors. And that was a little overwhelming to me. But I think that if I didn't have so much going on in my personal life, I might feel differently about it. And it may have been a lot easier for me to move through those obstacles. Actually cutting open the steeks, I reinforced them on my sewing machine and then cut them open, and that was much easier than I was anticipating. I just watched a couple videos to make sure I was doing it right before I actually cut into anything. But yeah, it wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be, and I think it's one of those things that I'm looking back at And I'm just like really proud of myself for putting myself out there and trying something new and kind of scary. And realizing that maybe it wasn't that scary after all. It's just kind of cool and empowering. So like I said, this is the one that I haven't finished yet and can't technically attest to how it fits into my wardrobe, but I have tried it on. I still have to cut open my second steek on my second sleeve actually. And so like one arm is tucked in and one arm's in a sleeve, but it is so, so beautiful. I am so excited to wear this. And I do think it's going to be something that I wear quite frequently and that's easy to style. I think it's the statement piece in any outfit. And, the colors I really love and I just think will fit really well into my wardrobe. So I do feel confident in recommending the Vita if this is something you're interested in. I don't think it's a project for everyone, but if you're kind of wanting a little bit more of a challenge, if you're wanting to invest a little bit more time and focus into something and kind of up-level your skills, or maybe you've done a million of these Fair Isle projects and you want to do more and you haven't heard of the Vita, highly recommend the Vita. Also, if you like the colorwork motif but don't want it in a cardigan, whether that's like you don't want to knit a cardigan or maybe you won't wear it as much, Susan Crawford also has a pattern in the same book, Echoes, that uses the same motif but in vest form, and that's the Gertrude vest. So if you are wanting to do something a little less intense and not worry about maybe the sleeves that I'm having to worry about, the vest is a really great option and really, really beautiful too. The last category I want to talk about today is knit accessories. I do primarily knit sweaters. That's what brings me the most joy. That is what I love wearing the most, but I do also have quite a few knit accessories in my closet. And so I just wanted to take a minute to talk about the ones that have really stood out to me. First is the Rad Plaid Cowl by Andrea Mowry or Drea Renee Knits. This is a fingering, lace, and sport weight cowl. You use all 3 weights throughout, and it is knit on US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needles. How it's constructed is that you cast on with a provisional cast on, and then you knit a tube all the way down, and then you do a half twist, and then Kitchener the 2 ends together. So it's decently straightforward and mindless. The circumference that's recommended in the pattern is 29 inches in length before you join, but because it is just a tube, you could easily make that longer or shorter to your preference. There's really nothing stopping you from doing that. It's also, the colorwork is done using mosaic knitting, which if you're not familiar, is a form of colorwork where you only knit one color at a time. In this case, let's say you have color A and color B going on one row. What you would do is you would knit all the stitches you want done in color A and just slip anything else and go up the entire way around. And then the next row, you pick up color B and you slip any stitches that you don't want worked in color B and only knit the ones that should be done in color B. So it's a way of doing color work where you don't really have to manage tension for multiple yarns or anything like that. You just get to work one color at a time. And the way that the stitch pattern in this specific pattern is done, it's really easy to read and understand what your next row should be. Like, you gotta get in the groove of it. So it's quite nice. If you're a fan of her tessellated patterns, but aren't quite ready to commit to a project of that size, this is a really great option. It uses the same stitch pattern, just in cowl form. I specifically love this pattern because there are so many unique color combinations. It calls for, like I said, 3 different colors: a lace, a sport, and a fingering weight yarn. And not only is just having 3 yarns mean that you could do a lot of different color combinations, but also depending on what yarn you assign to what letter, color A, color B, or color C, it results in a totally different looking fabric. Like, I could swap the yarns I used for A and B and it would just look entirely different. And I just think that's really fascinating. There's a lot of different things to play with. And this was a lot of fun to work up. Decently mindless because you're just working one color at a time. The only thing that makes it not totally mindless is that you have 3 balls of yarn attached, and just kind of have to make sure they don't get too tangled. But otherwise it's all knit and slip stitches. And so it's very easy to take on the go and just knit to the length you want. The finished product, why I love it so much, is because it's something that doesn't need a lot of finagling to make look good. It's just, one loop and you just pop it over your head, kind of adjust where you want the twist to be, and there you are. It looks really great. So it's not like anything that you have to wrap yourself and kind of adjust the ends of. It's just really easy to wear and looks cute all the time. So this was a really great cowl. I would love to make another couple versions, but this is like my go-to on cold days when I'm taking a walk outside. This is a really great piece to pop on and just have a little bit of warmth and color. The next accessory pattern I want to talk about is the Oslo hat by Petite Knit. This is a DK weight hat knit on US 2.5 or 3mm needles, and it is knit from the bottom up. So you do the decreases for the hat at the very end. The head circumferences in the pattern range from 18 inches to 25 inches. And I will say I bought this pattern a few years ago, and I technically bought the Oslo hat mohair edition. Petite Knit has since combined the two together, so I don't totally know how that changes because I don't have the new version, the combined version. So I'm just working with what I have. But it's a really lovely hat. I think that there are a lot of hats out there. I've knit a handful of them, and some have been good, some have been great, and some I have gone and frogged pretty much immediately after finishing just because I didn't like the finished product. The reason why the Oslo hat stands out to me so much as my personal favorite, and again, this is very subjective, is for a few reasons. First is the brim construction. It is a triple fold brim, so nice and thick and cozy and warm, but it's done in a way where there's no you don't have to fold it every time. There's no sliding around. The first two layers are stitched together, so those are nice and secure. And then on the last turn, Petite Knit has you do some rows of purls and knits and different things so that it results in a hat brim that doesn't want to move. It just wants to sit where it is and it stays there. So there's no weird folding happening. There's no weird sliding around as you're wearing it. It's just really easy to pop on, and it looks like it always does. So that's one of the reasons I really love it. The other is that with hats, specifically ribbed hats, I always personally struggle with it as I'm wearing it, kind of it sliding up and creating kind of a weird pucker at the top of my head that I don't love. Because this hat is all stockinette, it doesn't have that tension where it wants to slide up for me. So it doesn't get any of that weird pucker at the top, which is my preference. I will say the Oslo hat, I think the length that she has you knit to in the Oslo hat is longer than what I like. So I have shortened, I've made a note, and I do not knit quite as far. I start my decreases earlier than what she says to, just for my head size. But I think that that's something that, you kind of have to be aware of and potentially tweak in any hat pattern. I think all of us have slightly different size of heads and preferences. So just being aware of those kinds of measurements is always something that is good to have in your head when you're knitting a hat pattern. But the brim construction and the fact that it doesn't slide up and pucker means that this is the hat pattern that I keep coming back to time and time again. I'm planning on knitting my fourth one this year. I have a variety of different colors that kind of go with different coats and outfits and stuff, again, for my morning winter walks. And it's just a really nice classic hat pattern that, I'm sure I will keep coming back to time and time again. The very last pattern I want to talk about today is the Oxbow Socks by Andrea Mowry or Dre Renee Knits. This is a fingering or sport weight sock pattern. She has options for both. Knit on US 1 or 2.25mm needles. They are knit from the cuff down, and the pattern has sizes for foot circumferences ranging from 5.25 inches to 9.5 inches. I have knit a lot of socks in my time knitting. I've made, lots of vanilla stockinette socks. I have made cabled socks. I have made lace socks. I have made lots of different knit purl texture socks. And the reason why the Oxbow Socks tops them all is really in the simplicity of this knit purl texture. I think this pattern is the absolute perfect blend of interesting and mindless. It's one that I can really easily take with me wherever I want to go, pick up and understand exactly what I need to do in the next row. It's very easy to read your stitches and understand what needs to come next. But also the pattern creates such a nice rib-like texture where it kind of forms to your foot and just creates like the coziest, nicest fitting socks I have ever made. It's just truly, truly lovely. I've knit 3 pairs, and honestly, that's basically all I want to knit moving forward is Oxbow socks. I just think that they're a really, really great cozy classic sock that also have a little bit of interest to them. I love that it has a heel flap and gusset so that you can kind of adjust your heel flap length and the amount of stitches you pick up for the gusset depending on your foot size. It's really easy to customize and make fit for you. I recently discovered that I actually have a flatter foot than maybe most people do. So I need to knit a shorter heel flap and pick up fewer stitches for the gusset. It's very, very easy to do. In this pattern, it's like not an issue at all. It doesn't really affect anything. But yeah, it's just such an enjoyable sock to make, to wear, and truly, if this was the only sock pattern that I had access to for the rest of my life, I think I would probably be quite content. So highly, highly recommend the Oxbow socks if you haven't given them a try already. So that is all I have to share with you today. This video has been so much fun to prep for and film and just to think about. I think taking a minute to consider everything that I have made and what really has stood out as the best and most successful and just the pieces that I'm most proud of has just been really, really fulfilling and enjoyable. I think it's really easy to be so focused on what we want to make next and what's exciting us moving forward that it's easy to kind of forget all the amazing things that we've done in the past and just how incredible this craft really is and how special it is. So if you haven't taken a minute to think about your past work, I highly recommend doing so. I would absolutely love to hear some of your favorite projects that you've made in the comments down below. This knitting community is so incredible, and I think that any opportunity we have to share the things that bring us the most joy and that we're most proud of, I think is an opportunity to bring us together. So I would love it if you would share that in the comments below. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much, truly. I really, really appreciate it. If you haven't already, if you could take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel, that really helps me out. I hope you've made a lot of progress in whatever craft you've been working on during this time. And just have a really wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.